Only the other day I turned 75, and having seen the likes of the great J.R.D. Tata, uncle of Ratan Tata, the great Rusi Modi, arguably the greatest man in industrial relations in the world, well into their late age. With Rusi Modi, I remember spending virtually the last but one day before he left us all. I was like a son to him. It was such a great, great experience being with such wonderful, great Indians. They thought like Indians, they behaved like Indians, and they made India proud. J.R.D. Tata had got the Bharat Ratna, Rusi Modi got everything but the Bharat Ratna. Meeting such great people and being a person who grew up in their presence virtually, are just the right people to emulate. Now, I am very concerned, very involved in peace building, as they now say, all over. Whether you go to Malaysia, whether you go to Moscow, whether you go to Kiev, Ukraine, whether you go to Latin America, or whether you are in good old London, they will continuously be speaking on peace building. Peace is no building. Peace is what can keep us alive. Peace is what can keep us stable. Peace is what can give us sustenance. Peace is what brings certain quiet. Peace is when the economy prospers. Peace is when people don't go hungry. Peace is when people don't worry about the depleting water resources. Peace is a lot of things, but peace is not war. And war can never bring in peace. If there is a pause during the war, don't mistake it to be peace. The question is, I intended to start a little differently, but then let me carry on the way I've started and why peace is indispensable, completely and wholly indispensable. I don't know, among the boys and girls, how many of you have read good literature when you were back in school, or even after school during the interim time, before you came and decided to enroll your names here in this great institution. Did you do a little bit of reading or literature, be it English, be it Bengali, be it Hindi? Did you do some reading or creative writing? Be that as it may. Let me start by quoting to you just an excerpt from a huge, enormous sentence. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was a season of light, it was a season of darkness. Imagine what a bundle of contradictions this little excerpt was. This was written by the great Charles Dickens. And he started his novel, A Tale of Two Cities, London and Paris, with these words. And A Tale of Two Cities, remember, had the French Revolution as its backdrop. Now, why am I speaking about the French Revolution? The French Revolution was something that happened on the 14th of July, 1789. Because the French Revolution, people realized King Louis XIV and Marie Antoinette, his queen, were ruling, and they had no idea of the realities on the ground. The ground realities were not known to them. We in India, right now, in 2024, have arguably the largest and most vibrant democracy in the world. In 1780s, France had aristocracy running there. The lords and ladies, the rich and the famous were the ones who were running the country. But they're not doing justice to the mass, and the masses comprise poor people, relatively poor people. In fact, it's now become a joke and cliche in literary circles that somebody had once come and knocked on the Queen's door. He had the temerity to knock on the Queen's door. The Queen shouted from inside, "What is it?" She opened the door, and there was this man with his head bowed. He said, "Your Majesty, people are shouting outside." "Why?" "Because, Your Majesty, they say there is no bread, there is no water." "No bread? No bread? So what?" She slammed the door by saying, "Ask them to go and eat cake instead." There was just no feeling. So you see, there are a lot of people in Europe. Europe is like a large country, a country like India. India is, in fact, very strictly speaking, India, for those who are better adept at geography, if we are able to answer, Europe, India is a little bigger than Europe. And if you were to look at the ancient India, do remember, India had no neighbors. Sri Lanka was part of India. Nepal was part of India. Burma or Myanmar was part of India. Bangladesh was part of India before 1947. Afghanistan was part of India. India was huge. In any case, whatever is left of India is almost as large, I personally feel, is larger than Europe. But in any case, in Europe, people were concerned. There were lots of creative people. We have heard of so many of them. From the Renaissance period, we've heard of people like Da Vinci from Italy, Michelangelo. We've heard of Raphael. You've come to England and you've heard of people like Wordsworth, Keats, Shelley, and earlier William Shakespeare. I mean, the list goes on. Well, in 1780s, you had a 19-year-old William Wordsworth who paved the way for romantics like Keats and Shelley. People like him, the young musical composers, we had the Mozarts and the Beethovens around that time. With so many people, all of them moved to Paris to see how the Bastille would fall. And the falling of the Bastille would mean the success of the French Revolution. So, to cut a long story short, the Bastille fell on the 14th of July. And after that, there was such celebration. People felt justice had been delivered. But was it? Yes, the government was ousted. A new government, a kind of a makeshift government was formed. Not an elected government. The government of chosen people who had thought fit to lead were the ones who were put in place with responsibilities. But then, what never ceased to stop, never stopped, was the guillotine. You know what the guillotine is? In the audience, anybody? Among the youngsters?
I hope everybody knows what is guillotine.
I beg your pardon? Who's speaking?
Me. I hope everybody knows what is guillotine.
No. Let me find out from my wonderful young friends. Do you know what a guillotine is?
Yes, sir.
If you can, I see your name. Could you just get up and identify yourself?
My name is Utpal.
Right. What is a guillotine?
Punishment.
Guillotine is not punishment. It is the ultimate punishment, but it's not really. I'll tell you what a guillotine is. It's just a huge, I think the height must be nearly 50 feet, if not more, tall. A blade, huge blade, almost a gigantic axe, and by a particular lever, when it was pulled, the guillotine would fall on a person whose head would be below, and it would cut. The guillotine falls with a huge weight, and the head goes rolling like a ball. Hundreds and thousands of heads rolled. That marked the success of the French Revolution. That was violence. How could that be misconstrued as peace? But the problem was the celebrations that followed the French Revolution became muted too soon. People like William Wordsworth became depressed, very sad. Because after that, even on suspicion, people pulled out people from houses. And everybody was guillotined. The guillotine went on. Non-stop, day in and day out, even in the night. And that, after French Revolution, was called the Reign of Terror. I'm spending a lot of time deliberately on the French Revolution, primarily because what is prevailing indirectly in the world today would remind you of the Reign of Terror in various other forms all over the world. I'll prove it to you in a minute. When that happened, to cut a long story short, all people like Wordsworth returned home. Wordsworth went back to England, to the Lake District in England, which is now a great tourist attraction. And he went and settled down in his sister Dorothy's cottage. The cottage was a beautiful cottage. And if someday you go to England and you go to Lake District, well, that would be you would feel you almost arrived in heaven. No wonder Wordsworth loved nature so much, because nature never looks more beautiful than it does in places like Lake District. Now when he went there, Wordsworth, it took him some time to get out of the shock of what he had witnessed in Paris. So he sat down and he wrote a poem. If my memory serves right, the first few lines of the poem ran like this. The world, listen to me carefully, please. The world is too much with us, late and soon. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. 'Tis a sordid doom. The world, and we are with the world all the time. We are only getting and spending, materialism. And we lay waste our powers. God has blessed us when He sent us to this world with He gifted us with plenty of knowledge, wisdom, or the ability to learn and be wise. He gifted us with so much the power of observation. He did not just send us to eat and drink and be merry. He gave us a lot of gifts. The problem is we don't use those gifts. Which is why today, not far from where you are, is a Porivesh Bhavan, where learn all about environment. And today, one of the most major concerns of United Nations is environment. So we don't look into the nature that is ours. Nature is two-pronged. Nature meaning the nature that you see, the green that you see, and nature does not just the green, everything, the mountains, the seas, everything is nature. And the nature that is ours means our nature, the man's nature. We don't see who's sad, who's happy, who's feeling terribly morose, who's feeling awful, and we do nothing about it. This is a fact. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no intention to come here and give you a very serious, high-grade topic, which is very possible for me. I can do it. I want to tell you something that you will understand. You all know that since childhood, all of us, even the very senior, established, esteemed faculty and the gentlemen who are sitting in front, they were also once children, like I was a child, once upon a time. And what did we love as children? Of course, we loved being loved by our parents, by our elders. True. But what did we love? We loved to listen, especially before we went to sleep, a good story. Even today, even in school, if you remember, besides the serious classes, if the teacher ever told you, now I'm going to tell you a story. Oh, there was something inside you that became very happy. Kalpo. Kimacha. Ashcheta kalpo. You think of a story. Now let me tell you something that was not a story. It will sound like a story. In 269 BC, you do your own calculations, we had, at least according to me, the greatest emperor that India had. Ashoka the Great. You know the government of India symbol, the Ashok Chakra. Ashoka the Great, from the Chandragupta Maurya Empire. In 269, what happened? The Kalinga War. Where is Kalinga? Well, the coast of Orissa today. It was a war to settle who will take the coast, the coastal areas. It was a terrible war. It was one of the most horrific wars in the history of mankind. At one point of time, Ashoka was invincible. He was an undisputed leader of the entire India. And as I told you, there are no neighbors around India. There was just India, and after that there was China, and the other Asian countries that you see today. Thailand, for instance, has been one country that was never invaded, ever, in its history. But Ashoka the Great, in the middle of the war, in the afternoon, suddenly his attention was diverted by one of his lieutenants. He said, "What's happened?" He said, "Just look. Look." He pointed to the river. The river had turned its color into red, purple red. How could a river change its color? River had not changed its color at all. River was the same. The color changed because so many people died, so many soldiers died, and all the young widows, they came to mourn. They came and they had the husband's head in their lap, and their blood rolled into the river, and the river's color changed. Ashoka looked, he stared, and he couldn't believe it. He had been in wars before, he had seen bloodshed, he had seen the dead before, people dying before. But this was something that transformed him, changed him completely. Gentlemen, please, hello, one in yellow shirt, I'm talking to you. I love to hear law. If I've come to you to talk, if I'm giving you so much attention, why don't you give me some attention? You're talking to him, laughing away, oh this will end soon. There'll be another day. So why have I come all this distance? And you are talking away. Is this fair? I'm not going to complain. I'll handle it myself. If you don't feel good, you are free to go anywhere you want to. Go to Purivesh Bubble. Do something about the Purivesh. Now, the matter is very simple. When he saw the red, the color red, Ashoka was transformed. He took his large sword, huge sword, and just threw it away. That was the end of Ashoka being in a war ever. What did he do? I'll cut a long story short. Ashoka sent thousands of emissaries all across Asia to spread the word of Buddhism. What did Buddhism stand for? Peace. See, I'm coming to peace, and I'm taking other routes to come to peace, just to explain to you. Because Buddhism has no distinct for violence of any kind. Everything, if you read the Dalai Lama's writings, or if you read his speeches, you'll understand how much emphasis is given on peace and why not. Well, the whole Asia became Buddhist. Later on is another story that China, which is also all Buddhist, well, most of China, the communist China, became communist or Maoist. But then rest of Asia stayed Buddhist. Even Laos during difficult times, Cambodia during difficult times, Vietnam during difficult times. They are still all Buddhists. But the fact remains, peace, as is written here, is my language, is at a premium. It's very expensive now. It's very hard to get. Whatever is hard to get is very expensive. Expensive not in terms of rupiah, anna, paisa, not in terms of dollars, pounds, or the euros or euros. It is just not there. Do you know India is a very peaceful country? But do you know the rank of India in world peace? Any idea? Anybody? Do you know the rank of India? There are over 200 countries in the world. What is the rank of India? In the region of 124, which is much better than what it was 2, 3, at least 4 years back. India was then 130, beyond 130, now 124. It is improving, it will improve more. But the fact remains, even as I'm talking to you, there are at least 64 places in the world where there are conflicts. Present day world. The lady, when she was reading my resume, mentioned that I had interviewed Mikhail Gorbachev, you all heard of him. He was one of the greatest men, at least that I have seen, and history would recognize. It was Napoleon Bonaparte who was the first person who changed the history of Europe, or paved the way for what you see, what you used to see in Europe, let's say last century, when Swami Vivekananda was there. Before he went and after he left Chicago. That was Europe that was paved by, thanks to Napoleon. The next man who changed the course of European history was, way back in 1991, a certain man whose name was Mikhail Gorbachev. He was the president of the USSR. USSR meant the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Republics in plural. Mind you, that's very important. Why is there a war today between Ukraine and Russia? You know, when it was USSR, it was Gorbachev. Around that time, the President of the United States was Ronald Reagan. The Prime Minister of Britain was Dame Margaret Thatcher. The Chancellor of Germany was Helmut Kohl. These people used to get together for their own meetings quite often. Now I went to Stockholm for the nuclear disarmament summit in 1988 in January, when the temperature outside was minus 35 degrees centigrade. Alright? Around that time I worked very, very hard. I was much younger, I could do a lot more legwork, I could use my brain much more, I could skip lunches, skip dinners, and kept sending reports. The man who noticed it was Mr. Arbatov, who was a chief advisor to Mr. Gorbachev. And Mr. Arbatov and I became very friendly. For some reason, he took to me. I'd gone with our then Prime Minister. When we got close, almost on adda terms, I told Mr. Arbatov, I have but one request. Yes, you tell me, the way a Russian would speak English. You tell me. He said, I would love, I know it's very difficult. He doesn't meet Western journalists one-on-one. But I would be very happy to meet. I knew it was impossible. I was asking for the moon. I said I would love to meet Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev. Ah, you want to meet Mr. Gorbachev? I said, yes. He looked up. And then he looked up. Yes, I've seen you. I've seen you the way you work. Very good. I will tell you, where do you stay in India? I said Calcutta. Oh, you stay in Calcutta. Good. You know, when you go back, within 2 weeks, the Consul General of in Calcutta is going to meet you. I will not say anything more. I had almost forgotten about it. And then I get a call. How did you know my number? From the Russian Consul General. Mr. Chatterjee. I said, yes, this is so and so. I'm the Russian Consul General. When would you be free today, lunchtime? I said, yes, anything in particular? Please come, let us have lunch, talk over lunch. And within 3 months I was flying to Moscow. It was bitterly cold. And I met Mr. Gorbachev. Mr. Gorbachev, when I met him, he was so friendly, very nice, a no-nonsense man. There was a tall man. He was close to 7 feet, almost. Must be 6'11". He had a moustache, a large moustache, a barrel of a moustache. So if I asked, I had gone prepared. If I asked Mr. Gorbachev a question, it was loaded. It was a loaded question. Mr. Gorbachev answered, and it took 8 minutes to answer each question, 8 to 9 minutes. I was taking down, notes, but before I could take down notes, it was a tall man who answered the 8 minutes of Mr. Gorbachev's answer in 1.5 minutes. This happened twice. Then I stopped. I said, Mr. Gorbachev, please forgive me. I was as polite as possible. So please forgive me. I asked a question. You take 8 or 9 minutes to answer. And this gentleman answers it in 1.5 minutes. I don't know what he's editing. He edits the whole thing out. How can I possibly carry an interview, Mr. Gorbachev? What would it read like? My question and your answer in one sentence. A short sentence. Would it be fair? Mr. Gorbachev looked at me, and I looked at him, and he broke into a smile. You know what he did? This amazing personality walked one step towards me. He was on that sofa, I was on this sofa. He just came, put his arm around me, and he says, "You are young. You are impatient. But how do you know that?" He has not said the whole thing. But Mr. Gorbachev, let's cut that out. When you meet Mr. Reagan, I've seen both of you walking alone together, just two of you. I've seen you and Mrs. Thatcher. I've seen you and Mr. Cole. You speak in English. So why can't you speak in English to me? Don't worry. When you go out of this room after the interview, and after we share a little bit of something else, meaning some tea and snacks, well, you will get the entire transcript. And I got the entire transcript. You know what he did? The Berlin Wall fell because of his approval. The Iron Curtain fell. Russia was open. The Cold War with the United States ended. And not only that, all the plural, the republics became actual republics. Earlier, they were all under Soviet rule from Moscow. So Ukraine got its sovereignty, Estonia did, Georgia did, Latvia did. So many of these countries they did. But Putin, who in East Germany was an SS man, an ordinary constable who looked into personal lives and took negative action, became close to Yeltsin, who was Gorbachev's successor, and he climbed the steps very high very soon. And he decided he would change the Russian government and Russia by capturing all these republics that had gone away. That is why he waged a war on Ukraine. The war with Ukraine is on. Today you have got the Gaza war on, something that was started by the Hamas. You have wars going on everywhere. The situation in India is not very good. In Manipur, you have got the Chinese sending drones. There's Chinese intervention. Pakistan is a constant trouble. Myanmar is helping the Chinese. Myanmar is a terrorist outfit. Everywhere you have this. If you enter your Google, if you search my name, Utpal Chatterjee, journalist, you will find plenty. If you want to know something more about me, you will find plenty, including photographs. But if you go there in Google and search, you will have everything. Everything that I'm telling you. I don't read Google. But after 3 paragraphs, my head becomes a bundle of confusion. It's much better to do the homework in a different way. I do it early morning till very late in the night. Sometimes I go to sleep at 3 in the morning. I write. I'm writing a book. I wake up sometimes very early, at around 4:35. Because at that time, the world is totally quiet and peace, and it allows me to do plenty of work. Mental and cerebral work. Ladies and gentlemen, those who know me relatively well, my friend Pranab here for instance, they know I'm an incurable optimist. I see good in everything and in everybody. If I lose my cool over somebody, I keep it to myself generally. Rest assured, I'll be the first person to go and shake hands with that person and help him, no matter what the situation. Today is the age we must remember never to compromise with the truth. As a person, be a peaceful human being. Learn to love peace, honor peace by setting an example. Try to help those who are not as well off as you. Try to keep a pleasant disposition. Keep smiling. Before I came up, I was in the principal's room. I tell you, the 6 of us had a marvelous chat, as if we had known each other for donkey's years. That is how you should keep yourself. Be pleasant, be friendly. It's infectious, it spreads. Nobody will ever misunderstand you. লোকটা ভালো, হাসি মুখে, কথাবার্তা কি সুন্দর বলে. They'll say a lot of things. ये आदमी, ये इंसान, सचमुच बड़ा प्यारा इंसान. अरे देखो, इसका चलना फिरना देखो, आखिर देखो तो, जो बोलता है, जो सुनता है, बड़ा हिफाजत से सुनता है और बोलता है. जो टॉक लाइक दैट, बहुत इज्जतदार आदमी है. वही है इज्जतदार जो दूसरों को भी इज्जत करना जानता है. This is something all of you understand. আরেকজনকে স্নেহ করলে ও আরো চাইবে. আরেকজনকে ভালোবাসলে বাচ্চার কথা বলছি, তোমার কথা বলছি, বাচ্চাকে ও আরো হি লুক ফরওয়ার্ড, জানবে কে আমাকে ভালোবাসে, এর কাছে আমি সেফ. You see, try, set an example. Let your example rub off on others. If only our leaders all over the world, if 56 places are having conflicts, multiply that by 2. Those many countries are involved. So multiply that. I mean, think of the leaders of those countries. If they could also be a little friendly. Most of what is happening today and leading to frictions, mental, physical, is because of the fact that there is so much of hate being spread. Hate in speech, hate in declarations, Hate in threats, hate everywhere. Let us cut that hate out. Let us try and bring others closer. That is what civilization was all about. When you read about the Indus Valley civilization, when you read about the Mesopotamian civilization, when you read about all the old civilizations, and the oldest civilization was discovered just the other day. In the 70s, the excavations were first started by the French archaeologists, and then they came back in the 90s. And the civilization is called Mehergarh. Look up your Google. Mehergarh, Mehergarh. It is so advanced. Can you believe how advanced it was? 13,000 years ago. People used to be buried after they were dead. There was no religion. The French archaeologists came to do a lot of deductions. The port was almost as modern as today's ports. The surface transport, magnificent. And do you know when the root canal treatment was discovered? 13,000 years ago, during the Mehergarh civilization. People could do so much of good work. Can't we do that good work? So, let us be determined. In our own respective worlds, let us bring in peace. Let us bring in peace. When Obama became president, nobody gave him a chance and became the first black man to enter the White House. And he said, what? We can! And they did. They could. We can. So with me, can all of you repeat? We can. We can. What is this? You didn't have lunch today? No lunch? No water? We can!
We can!
We can!
We can!
But of course we can. Thank you so much, everybody.